Did you know that one of Alan Parsons Project's most famous songs was inspired by a surveillance society nightmare, and another was almost rejected by the record label? Stay until the end to discover which song was banned in several countries and why. I promise, after this you'll never hear these songs the same way again.
Okay, so let's get right into it, because this is the central mystery we really have to unpack. Think about it. The Alan Parsons Project. They sold millions and millions of records. They created maybe one of the most famous stadium anthems ever. And they basically defined a sound for an entire era, all without really being a band. Not in the traditional sense, with a fixed lineup, always on tour. Nope. They were something else entirely. An experiment, a complete enigma that just shattered all the rules.
So how in the world did they pull this off? Well, it all boils down to this really radical idea from the co-founder Eric Woolfson. He basically looked over at the film industry, right? You've got directors like Hitchcock, like Kubrick. They were the real stars, the visionaries behind the whole thing. And he thought, wait a minute, why can't a music producer do that? So the producer becomes the director. He casts different singers like they're actors for different parts, all to serve this one big central idea. It was the complete opposite of how a typical rock band worked. And the guy with the genius to actually execute this whole vision was, of course, Alan Parsons himself. His resume before the project even started is it's insane. Get this, he gets a job at Abbey Road Studios when he's just 19 years old. A few years later, he's just the assistant engineer on the Beatles' Abbey Road. And then he becomes the main engineer for Pink Floyd's absolute masterpiece, The Dark Side of the Moon. The man wasn't just recording songs, he was sculpting these massive sonic worlds, and you have to understand this background to get why the project's music always sounded so incredibly cinematic and perfectly polished. All right, let's dive into the countdown. Coming in at number 5, we've got a track that, well, it wasn't just surprisingly deep. This song basically spit in the face of the biggest musical movement happening at the time.
So, to really get this, you have to transport yourself back to 1977. What's happening is the absolute height of punk rock. The music scene is all about raw, angry, three-chord chaos. And then, strolling right into the middle of that musical hurricane is the Alan Parsons Project. Their sound? The polar opposite. We're talking meticulously produced, orchestral, and even kind of funky. You literally could not have been more out of step with the times. And you know what? This was totally on purpose. Parsons himself was crystal clear. He wanted nothing to do with the punk bandwagon. This quote from him says it all. He just saw it as this excuse to be sloppy, He was totally determined to do his own thing because he believed, he trusted, that there was still an audience out there for ambitious, detailed, well-crafted rock music.
And guess what? He was absolutely right. Completely against the grain, against all odds, their song I Wouldn't Want to Be Like You starts climbing the charts. It becomes a major hit. So, what was it? What was it about this track that totally connected with people, even when it felt like it was swimming against the entire cultural tide?
Okay, so let's get into the secrets of this song. First off, that groovy, almost disco-funk beat, that wasn't just there to make you dance. It was a deliberate, defiant statement against punk. But here's the real mind-blower, the lyrics. This is not just some simple breakup song. No way. It's actually a super deep, philosophical story told from the perspective of a robot who's looking at its flawed human creators and basically saying, yeah, I wouldn't want to be like you. It's just so clever and has so many layers.
Okay, so a philosophical funk hit in the middle of the punk explosion is pretty wild. But trust me, that is nothing compared to the story of our next song and how a complete accident, a pop culture phenomenon, launched an entire album into the stratosphere.
So the story starts with this really grand vision. Parsons and Woolfson, they wanted to make a whole concept album based on Isaac Asimov's legendary sci-fi stories, I, Robot. And Asimov himself was totally on board. He loved the idea. But then there was one massive problem. He'd already sold the rights to a TV station. So, plan B. They had to pivot. They kept the title, they kept the general themes of robots and humanity, but they had to cook up their own original story.
And this is where fates, or I don't know, maybe the force, decided to step in. They go ahead and release their album I, Robot, with that absolutely iconic cover art, at the exact same moment that the entire world was about to be flipped upside down by another little sci-fi story. No, seriously, you cannot make this stuff up. The I, Robot album hit the shelves the very same week that Star Wars hit theaters. The timing was just an unbelievable cosmic stroke of pure luck. All of a sudden, overnight, the entire planet was completely obsessed with robots, droids, and anything to do with outer space.
So, what album is sitting right there in the record store with a giant robot on the cover? Yep, I, Robot. It basically became the default soundtrack for this brand new sci-fi craze. It just goes to show you, sometimes timing is everything. It rode that massive Star Wars wave all the way to platinum status. Hey, here's a really cool Easter egg for you. The last track on the album is called Genesis Chapter 1, Verse 32. The only thing is, Genesis Chapter 1 only has 31 verses. It's a super subtle, clever nod to the idea of a creation going beyond its creator. How cool is that?
Okay, we're at number 3 now, and this one is a genuine shocker. You 100% know this song, but I am willing to bet you have absolutely no clue who actually made it. Just picture it. It's the 90s, you're in Chicago. The stadium lights go dark, the energy in the building is just crackling, it's electric. And then you hear it. That pulsing, unforgettable instrumental starts to build. And you just know that Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls are about to hit the court. That music, it is the sound of a dynasty.
That legendary track is called Sirius, and it was created by the Alan Parsons Project. Yeah, for millions of people, that is just a jaw-on-the-floor moment. The song that became the theme for American basketball in the 90s was made by a British prog rock project.
And this is where the story gets really wild. The gap between what people think this song is and what it actually is massive. Everyone just assumed, oh, Sirius, that's got to be some hard-rocking American band that's always on the road. The reality? It couldn't be more different. It was born in a quiet recording studio, meticulously crafted by 2 guys who built their entire career on not playing live. The irony is just incredible. One of the greatest live sports anthems of all time came from a band that basically never played live.
All right, on to number 2. And to really get the story behind one of the project's biggest hits, first we have to talk about something else. We have to talk about the album that they never, ever wanted you to hear.
So this mysterious album was called The Sicilian Defense. Now, if you know anything about chess, you know the Sicilian Defense is a super aggressive opening move. It's a power play. And that is exactly what this album was, a calculated power move against their record label.
So here's the deal. It's 1979, and they are locked in this nasty contract dispute with their label, Arista Records. They needed some serious leverage. So they came up with this brilliant, kind of crazy plan. To fulfill the terms of their old contract, they went into the studio and, in just 3 days, they cranked out this bizarre, challenging, all-instrumental album. They handed it in, fully expecting and hoping that the label would absolutely hate it. And they did. And oh boy, did they hate it. The label flat out rejected it, called it unreleasable. So for decades, the Sicilian Defense becomes this mythical thing, the great lost album. Alan Parsons himself wanted nothing to do with it. This quote says it all. He literally hoped the tapes didn't exist anymore. He just wanted it to vanish. But here's the twist.
The whole gambit worked perfectly. By delivering this terrible album, they forced the record label back to the negotiating table. A brand new, much better deal was signed. And then, in this perfectly ironic twist, what was their very next album? It was called The Turn of a Friendly Card, a concept album all about, you guessed it, the risks and rewards of gambling. It was a case of life totally imitating art, and that album gave us the huge hit Games People Play.
But here's the thing. That whole contracting mess, that legendary lost album, it did way more than just inspire an album about gambling. That entire, risky, high-stakes episode led directly to the creation of their single most famous, most successful, and probably most misunderstood song of all time.
Look, it's a perfect chain reaction, like dominoes falling. Step 1, the gamble. They deliver the unreleasable album. Step 2, the rejection. The label hates it, but now they have to renegotiate. Step 3, the payoff. That brand new, much better contract gives them the total freedom they needed to create their most commercially successful album ever, Eye in the Sky.
And that, right there, brings us to our number 1 song, the one we promised you at the very beginning. The haunting, unforgettable, timeless masterpiece, Eye in the Sky.
So what is the hidden story here? Well, first off, it's not just a simple breakup song. Eric Woolfson actually got the idea in Las Vegas from the feeling of being constantly watched by the security cameras in the casinos, the literal eye in the sky. It's a song about surveillance. And here's the payoff I promised you. That very theme, being watched, got the song banned in several authoritarian countries back in the day because they thought it was a criticism of their governments. And just think about that what if. If they never made that crazy Lost album, they never would have gotten the new contract. And this iconic song, a masterpiece born from a business dispute, probably would never have been written.
I mean, when you really step back and look at the whole story, it's just wild. We've got a disco hit that thrived during the peak of punk rock, a sci-fi album that got a massive boost from a blockbuster movie by pure chance, a stadium anthem that defined a sports dynasty created by a band that never even toured, and their biggest song ever, all because of a legendary Lost album they made as a strategic gamble. It's just incredible.
But hey, I've got one last little bonus fact for you that you probably didn't know. What happened after the project was over? Well, in a move that honestly makes perfect sense, Eric Woolfson took that whole producer-as-director concept to its ultimate conclusion. He started writing actual, successful stage musicals, basically turning the cinematic, conceptual idea of the project into real-life theater.
The story of the Alan Parsons Project just goes to show you, a legacy isn't always built on a stage in front of thousands of people. Sometimes it's built quietly, in a studio, with pure imagination and a stubborn refusal to play by anybody else's rules. So, I gotta ask, which one of these secret stories surprised you the most? Drop a comment below and let us know.